So a couple of months ago, I got an email from somebody who has a podcast, a time travel podcast at that.
Oh boy, it's a time travel podcast.
And they were asking me about the movie Millennium, the one with the airplane. You remember that movie?
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain in your seats.
Forget about this. There's going to be a paradox if you don't.
Anyway, he'd found my review and wanted to talk about it, but not just in any fashion. He wanted to talk about it on a podcast. So what you're about to see and hear, well, not really see, but what you're about to hear is actually the podcast that we recorded when we were talking about the short story that inspired Millennium called Air Raid. So anyway, check these guys out. They're very cool. It's called Oh Boy, a time travel podcast. And if you're like me, you know where Oh Boy comes from. It's time travel related. Come on, you get it. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and shut up and get to it.
Well, listen, the last question I have for you, Tug, before we actually dive into talking about this short story is, did you bring your olives?
I did not bring my olives, but I did bring key lime yogurt covered pretzels.
Whoa.
What the f*** is that? Whoa!
What do they do in the Midwest? Is that what
I don't know, man. I'm
Midwest?
from Florida, so...
That's where you get... Oh, man.
Well,
I gotta get to the store before those tariffs go into effect. Get me some of them pretzels.
I did bring some olives, and I pulled out some new ones, Brian.
Yeah?
I said, in honor of having our first guest on the show.
Oh, you got the fancy ones?
Yeah, Pearl's garlic stuffed olives.
Garlic stuffed?
Yeah.
Whoa.
I figured
bold.
since we're all by satellite here, you're not going to smell it anyway.
We've got to get out of this stench.
Stench? Of what speakest thou?
That's fair.
So I'm going to try it out.
If this were a Pepe Le Pew cartoon, my computer would be melting right now.
All right, well, I am trying this out. Do you want to tell us what Air Raid is about?
Yes.
Whoa, wait a minute. Doc, are you trying to tell me that my mother has got the hots for me?
Precisely.
Okay, here I go.
Air Raid. Short story by John Varley, whose name you'll recall from Millennium. If you haven't already picked up on that. In the future.
This.
I'm sorry, man. I got to interrupt. I mean, the face that Nate's making.
Oh, God, Nate. Nate's having an issue over there.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
I think he's going to gag.
It's not good.
Nate, were these supposed to be used in, like, cooking?
I don't know. It doesn't say that.
Try like 4 or 5 of them and maybe it'll sink in.
Just put them all in at once. No, I'm going to wash it down with my whiskey and Sprite. Oh, brother.
Man, Nate, much like the passengers aboard Sunbelt Airlines Flight 128,
Good segue.
may have flown a little too close to the sun. In the future, Earth is harsh and inhospitable. Its inhabitants, mutated via the genetic winnowing of humanity, struggle to save and dominate each other. But one group is desperately trying to ensure that humankind has a future, one that perhaps does not involve leprosy. These are the brave members of a snatch team, post-humans in various states of decay, who travel back in time to pluck doomed airline passengers from the timeline and transport them to an Earth-like planet to begin anew. Mandy, a stand-in for a stew named Mary Sondergaard, and her teammates Liza, Pinky, Dave, and Christabel travel back to September 15th of 1979 to collect these unwitting saviors of all humanity while avoiding paradoxes and, I guess, falling apart. But can their portal be maintained in the future long enough to save this plane load of people in the past? We find out in Air Raid.
Or at least 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah.
That was a shocker right there at the end of the story for me. Well, what do we think about this, gentlemen?
I think our guest should start.
I mean, I like it. I think it's more harrowing. It's more bleak, for sure. And it's also written like a cyberpunk story, even though it was written before cyberpunk was even a thing, which I think is kind of interesting.
Yeah, when was this published?
70-something?
Yeah, 75, 76, somewhere in there.
Yeah, but that's before cyberpunk, because cyberpunk wasn't a
Yeah.
thing until Neuromancer, and it was like early 80s.
Yeah.
But yeah, it kind of feels like it. It feels like a cyberpunk novel, just without all the digital weirdness.
I wanted this to be the movie condensed and like, here's the germ of the idea. And I don't know if it works for me. I don't think it's what I wanted.
I think this is the germ of the idea. I think it manages to pack in basically everything that Millennium presents, even if it's just one sentence. Like, the notion is presented of leaving something in the past.
Right. They even talk about having left a stunner in the past once.
Yeah. When I got to that sentence, I was like, there's Millennium.
We have to cover our tracks. Once a snatcher left her gun behind and it went in with the plane. Nobody found it. Or if they did, they didn't have the smoggiest idea of what it was. So we were okay.
So many of the notes I have in the margins are gross. And then I just keep going.
I think the grossest part is the first line. They have alarms in their heads that force them to get up.
Oh God, yeah, that's disturbing.
Oh yeah, vibrating my skull.
I was jerked awake by the silent alarm vibrating my skull. It won't shut down until you sit up. So I did.
That's dystopian.
The most dystopian sentence I've ever read in my life.
Can you imagine not being able to hit the snooze button? That just sounds like torture.
Awful.
I also find it really weird the way the paradox works in this story. I mean, in the movie, it's time quakes, which I'm glad to be rid of.
I have a time quake approaching.
Paradox. Time quake approaching. Force 3.
In this one, it's like if the paradox
quakes.
happens, it just resets. They fade away and go back to the future.
They come back? Like, nuts, that didn't work.
Yeah, or the people in the future would just like disappear, go back to the past and become, I forget what he said. He said something really weird, like they become jarred spaghetti sauce on the side of a hill or something. Yeah.
The people you've worked so hard to rescue are spread like tomato surprise all over some goddamn hillside in Carolina, and all you've got left is a bunch of ruined wimps and an exhausted snatch team.
Yeah, something goop related.
Yeah.
Did anybody here picture Cheryl Ladd while reading Mandy?
No.
Not at all.
Not at all. Not even close.
Not at all.
Really?
You know what I kept thinking of the whole time I was reading this, and even the process of like the cosmetic procedure to make them look more like normal people? I kept thinking of that Batman the Animated Series episode, Feet of Clay, the Clayface episode.
Oh, yeah.
He has that like cream that fixes his face. Right,
Yeah.
makes him handsome again. Like, that felt like, oh, they got to put like just a bunch of shit on their face.
Yeah, because she talks about something being printed and she has to like mold it to her head and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like Mission Impossible and stuff, you know?
Yeah, exactly. She had to wait for the synthetic skin to like sink into her skull or something.
I think the main reason I didn't picture Cheryl Ladd is that it's made abundantly clear that she's completely bald and she doesn't have that crazy 80s ridiculous hair.
See, I just pictured like Cheryl Ladd because she's sitting at the mirror trying to build this face.
Right.
I pictured her trying to build Cheryl Ladd's face.
I do feel like the short story answers a lot of the questions that are left over in the movie. They talk about how a lot of the wimps, they pre-mutilate them. And in the movie, if you'll remember, there's that line where one pilot goes back and sees that they're all burned up and comes back and says, and in the movie never addresses this at all. I feel like maybe in an earlier draft of the script they explained it like this.
But why would they have to do that? The plane's still going to crash.
Well, in the story, they say that they want to try to mold them so that their like dental records will fit or something like that.
The wounds are consistent. Like everything is consistent.
They just want to make sure that they get it all right. But otherwise, they could just smash up the face so that the teeth are all over the place. You know, that kind of stuff.
But there's also a moment in the movie where the wimps are walking past the people that are disembarking.
Yeah, and they all look fine.
And they all look, and it's like, oh, that guy looks exactly like me. What the hell is that all about? And he's like, no mutilation at all. And that was one of the things we picked up on when we watched the movie. Like, what was he talking about when he said they all look like they were on fire?
Yeah, that was one of the things that bugged me the most about the movie, yeah.
But it makes more sense, like you said, once you've read the short story, you're like, oh, okay, I see where that idea came from, and it probably just slipped through the cracks in a draft in the screenplay and ended up in there.
There's also a line in the story about she'd had a baby, and the brain bugs ate the life out of the baby's head, and that baby became a wimp.
I hate wimps. Every time I grab the harness of one of them, if it's a child, I wonder if it's Alice. Are you my kid, you vegetable, you slug? I joined the Snatchers right after the brain bugs ate the life out of my baby's head.
Yeah.
There's no explanation, just brain bugs. Okay.
Yeah, it's
the future, man. Dystopia. Do they ever indicate what is wrong with the world? I know they talk about acid rain in the movie, but...
There was a term that's in the story that I really liked. They said the old world was pre-mech, M-E-C-K, and that could mean so many different things. It could mean, like, robots. It could be like, robot uprising. Or it could just mean, like, muck, like, just gross stuff. Something gross happened.
Like these olives.
Yeah, like there are olives everywhere.
Yeah, like these people just started falling apart. Leprosy came raging back.
Yeah, they said something about paraleprosy. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, a finger fell off while she was sleeping.
What's it to you, buddy? It's like, something like that.
It's like,
yeah,
that was a
that's
weird
in
line.
my notes. I did want to talk about that one line. And what's it to you, bugger?
Yeah, what is that? Where did that come from?
Well, the author is just suddenly talking to us.
But that's impossible!
As if that's any of your business. I'm like, look, dude, I'm just reading your story.
I mean, what's going on with that line?
She's got some weird lines in the story. Like at one point when she's like stunning the passengers, she says, "Hi, I'm Mandy, fly me." Or, "I'm just trying to work my way through college." What is she, why is she saying these things?
Yeah, that one is also on my list. So
I think the brain bugs got to her.
Yeah, seriously, let me back you up a little bit on that, Eric, because I really do want to talk about both of those lines, honestly. So, I didn't see, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I did not see another line in this story that was addressing the reader.
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, I think that's the only one. What's it to you, bugger?
Like that one line, a week earlier, a finger had fallen off in my sleep. And what's it to you, bugger? Like, why?
I didn't ask you to tell me about that. Like,
exactly. Why? Who is she talking to? And then the one that you just mentioned, Eric, she says, "Pardon the intrusion. I can explain everything, you see." And then, of course, clocks her over the head, and then it comes off as like an 80s one-liner.
It doesn't even make sense. Like, even as an 80s one-liner, it's like...
It's a complete non sequitur. "Pardon the intrusion. I can explain everything. You see, I'm working my way through college." Like, what?
Well, I guess that's why they call it the punchline.
Like, one,
Zing.
the girl's already unconscious by the time you did, so who are you saying that for?
well, she's still workshopping it, obviously. This is something that she's using all the time.
I don't get it. I just don't understand.
I gotta tell you, though, there are a number of lines in here that are among the best lines I've ever read in anything.
Not those two, I think.
Going back to where she's getting her cosmetics done.
I smiled at myself. How nice to have lips.
Yeah.
And I was like, I never really thought about it, but yeah, it's pretty sick, you know?
Yeah.
Lips, pretty good.
Pretty good if you haven't had them. Yeah.
In all honesty, though, I did make a note of the worst string of words I've ever read and the maybe best line of anything we've covered. And the worst string of words.
The gun made a sound like a flying saucer with hemorrhoids.
Those are just random words, man.
Like, that's not even a... That might be AI.
That's not a thought.
Yeah. I don't even know what to visualize for that. I don't know what's... That was rough. Best line in anything we've ever talked about.
Oh, God, here we go.
I think my ass just fell off. Can they hold it together long enough?
She also has, like, one... As a sci-fi fan, I like fictional swear words, coming up with different ways to swear in the future.
Uh-huh.
Oh, frack off.
Oh,
And this one has one where she goes, "Standard friggin' oil." Like, that's so random.
Yeah.
And I like that in this weird dystopian, messed up future where everything is bleak and everything is horrible and everybody's falling apart, she still says friggin'. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talking about the swears and stuff, those come out the most when she's talking to the passengers who have very real rational concerns throughout this.
Yeah, and she's just getting mad at him and stunning them for no reason. Like, there's that college kid who's like, "I'm on your side. Are you trying to help me?" And she does something to his face. I don't know.
Yeah.
He's like, "Look, are you trying to rescue?" She's like, "Shut the f*** up and sit down." Whoa. Or I'll kill you, she says.
And then right at the end, she's like looking at him and like, "Oh, look at them with their perfect bodies. I f***ing hate them."
Yeah. I did really like that, though. Oh, man, even in the future, when everybody's falling apart, still cat.
Yeah.
How about, "I haven't the smoggiest idea"?
That's cute.
There was one that I'm pretty sure was a typo on the version I found online, where it was like something came out of a delivery slot, but it read slut. And I'm like...
Oh, that's the one I read.
That cracked me up.
Yeah.
That's the one I read. I just assumed it was slut.
Delivery slut is so much better. I think we should adopt it.
I mean, like, we have DoorDash. There should be delivery sluts. It's like a mixture of DoorDash and OnlyFans.
Delivery sluts. Well, there is a delivery slut in the movie.
What?
When she's in his hotel room, it's one of the scenes where they use the time portal to just drop clothes in.
Oh, yeah.
Right? But yeah, I did jot down, I haven't the smoggiest idea. It is definitely written in 1979. That's their biggest concern at that point was smog. In LA.
Thanks again to Nate and Brian over at the Oh Boy, a Time Travel Podcast for having me on. It was a lot of fun, and I urge you to go check them out. Give them a subscribe. Give them some love. They've got some great stuff. I've listened to their podcast on 12 Monkeys, which is really good. They've got an episode on The Constant, which is, the best Lost episode. So definitely check them out. I might be on there again one day. We'll see. Anyway, that's all for today. So until next time, this is the Unapologetic Geek telling you to never be ashamed of what you love, as long as you're not hurting anybody.